Hi, this is Shaniqua with Every Child Matters on Long Island. We're going to be starting our campaign trail today live for you all to hear about where candidate Todd Kaminsky stands on children's issues. I thank you for tuning in. Please share and let others know that they can watch this interview so that way they will know where he stands on children's issues before they go to the polls. So again, just like to introduce candidate Todd Kaminsky, who is actually the current senator right now in the New York State government. So what we're going to do is just give him a moment to let him talk a little bit about his platform as he's running for re-election for the same position. Thank you.
Hi, very nice to be here, and thank you for taking the time. I've tried my hardest to dedicate my career to public service. I was a prosecutor for 10 years, and the first few of those years were extremely formative and really almost exclusively dedicated toward children. I was a domestic violence prosecutor in the Queens DA's office, and those cases were very difficult cases, and children were caught in the middle of them many times, and I had to make decisions involving children and their welfare on a daily basis. And I also helped on special victims cases. It was my job to be on call in the middle of the night, and that included being staffed at the Child Advocacy Center in Queens, which only dealt with sexual and other abusive crimes specifically and only for children. So I had to learn a lot about those issues, and looking out for children was something that I did every day. So it's not just a slogan I say, it's not just a talking point. There were many days of my life where all I did was get up and make sure that our children were protected and safe and had somebody fighting on their behalf. I was also a corruption prosecutor, and one of the main cases I worked on when I became a federal prosecutor a few years after being an assistant district attorney was I prosecuted a state senator who ran a health clinic that was supposed to serve the poorest of the poor, and obviously it was a family health clinic. And instead of using that money to benefit the community, he used a great deal of that for self-enrichment. And he was convicted of that crime, and that was a number of years of my life I spent tracking that down and doing the trial in that case. When I got to the Assembly and in the Senate, children issues have always been important to me, whether education, whether about hunger issues, whether about mother development issues. So I'm sure you're going to ask me about specifics of that, but I'm very proud of my record. And at the end of the day, you know, the way you have to look at the world is we are simply here as stewards for the next generation, hopefully protecting and giving a better world and better opportunities to them. And you know, if we're not focused on that, then we're doing the wrong thing.
All right. Well, thank you for taking the time out just to explain a little bit about, you know, who you are and why you're running. Again, Every Child Matters serves as a bridge between community members. We try to connect community members to the advocacy that's going on for children's issues and empower you to reach out to your lawmakers and elected officials to see where they stand on children's issues. So what we're doing with our On the Campaign Trail series is really trying to meet with these candidates that are running for office to get them on record and ask them where they stand on children's issues. Because a lot of time at local debates and things, they talk about other issues, but they don't talk about children's issues. They don't talk about hunger, child safety, abuse, child care, poverty, neglect, those things that are also very important to us. And if we knew where some of these candidates stood on those issues, we'd be better off making our decision that way. And that would be a more educated decision if we knew where they stood. So I will begin to ask a few questions, and if any of you have some questions of your own, feel free to write it in the comment section, and our lovely camera assistant will let me know if there are any questions that come through. But again, thank you for tuning in. So I'm going to just start with my first question, and they may go a little, you know, all over the place depending on what feeling I get. But then there might be also like a part B to the question. We've been trying to ask people to keep their answers for about 2 to 3 minutes, but I understand that some questions may require a little bit of a lengthier answer, but just for time wise, so you know, people stay paying attention. All right, so my first question to you is this. 90% of a child's brain is developed by age 5. If elected, what will you propose to invest in for children 0 to 3 years old?
Sure. I mean, so those are the formative years. I myself have a 19-month-old right now, so I'm watching new development every morning, every night, every day. So I am deeply appreciative of that. So one of the things that we did in the Senate was make sure that programs for the most vulnerable youth are not cut. We restored millions, tens of millions of dollars to the Women and Infant and Children program this year in the Senate, and we made sure that agriculture programs that are designed to go toward public programs in schools, which obviously include pre-Ks, are fully funded. Child safety is critical to that. We need to have clean drinking water, and we need to make sure that children are not drinking lead of any kind. Obviously, any neurotoxins in the brain at that point are doubly or exponentially more harmful. So that's obviously critically important. But look, we need to make sure that our kids are well fed, are prepared to learn, and then have the adequate programs they need so that they are going to school even at that young age. I mean, that is no longer up for debate. That has to be something that we bring to every village, every municipality throughout the state. And so, having robust pre-K programs to me are essential.
Okay. And how would you propose that you bring that to every district?
I mean, look, for me, especially on Long Island, our Long Islanders pay a huge share of taxes, and almost nobody thinks that he or she is getting back the services that he or she deserves. So last year we were able to get a major boost in school funding, $20 million for Southwest Nassau. I was really proud to be part of that. But the availability of universal pre-K on Long Island is not as well established as you would like. So there are some places that have it, and there are many that don't, and it's kind of haphazard who does it, who doesn't. And the state needs to make that more available, more widespread. It shouldn't just be New York City that gets lavish with these programs. A child raised in, in Inwood in my district, a child raised in, Baldwin or Long Beach should absolutely have the same head start as any child in the state.
Okay. And what about children ages 0 to 3? I know you mentioned pre-K, which is for 4-year-olds.
Sure.
What about any thing that you propose to invest in for children 0 to 3?
Yeah, I mean, look, we absolutely need to make sure that we've got good informational programs out there so parents know that their kid can get proper doctor supervision, proper nutrition. One of the things I was proud to be part of this summer was I went to Baldwin, where they have a great public free lunch program for kids who go to their programs, and kids of all ages from infants on up we're getting lunch. So we need to make sure that our kids are not being left back, especially in those key development years. One of the really cool things that I liked that we did in the Senate was I voted for a tax credit that tells farmers if they give their products to food banks, they can get a tax credit. Okay. And I think that's a really creative idea. So we have to be creative, we have to think outside the box. And at the end of the day, if our youngest people are hungry, and I keep focusing on hunger, but I think hunger is an essential part of this. We're talking about brain development, we're talking about proper, especially when you're not at 4 and you're able to go to school every second, you want to make sure that nutrition and proper medical oversight is happening, and that we have to be creative, and we have to make sure that we're funding that adequately.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. What does childcare mean to you?
And childcare means that a parent shouldn't have to choose between earning a living and making sure that their child is being taken care of all day. And too many of our parents have to make that tough decision because childcare is expensive and they don't have that option. So for me, one of the key things I'm proud of leading the way on and voting for is paid family leave. This shouldn't have been something that caused a lot of hand-wringing. This, to me, is very obvious. And in a first world country, in one of the richest states, New York is the Empire State, we're supposed to be leading the way. And we actually did put our money where our mouth is and vote for paid family leave. And for me, we have to remember, it's not a great economy. In terms of wages, we're not really gaining ground. The middle class isn't gaining ground. So you have this bind where you have two parents working in order to make ends meet, especially on Long Island where it's so expensive to live. What are you going to do about childcare? And there aren't great options. There are expensive options and there are bad options. But in terms of making sure that we can have paid childcare, I think we need to be much more creative, much more open, much more accepting. Paid family leave is good. Obviously, you shouldn't have to quit your job if you have to take care of a sick person, but that concept needs to get extended further to childcare. And it's not, and if you go to Europe and many other civilized countries, it's not even a question that they've got really great, beautiful, subsidized childcare. Now, whether that is the actual answer, we need to explore, but we're not even really talking about it in an important way that we should in this country. It should be on the table, we should discuss it, we should find out what it costs, and I guarantee you if it was done responsibly, people would be willing to at least consider it, and I think eventually accept it.
Okay, thank you. If the minimum wage in New York has been increased, right? Now, how would this help or support privately owned, or how would you help or support privately owned or small childcare centers meet the gap for this increase in the minimum wage?
Sure. Look, out on Long Island, they definitely, we built in a lag so that they can get up to the $15 minimum wage at a slower rate, so they could absorb it a little bit longer time, so it wouldn't be so painful. But having some type of tax credit for people that offer quality childcare is something I'm absolutely open to. We need to be creative in thinking about this, and whether it's tax subsidies to the provider or those who are looking to put their kids in childcare, but who can't afford it, we need to consider those options. We shouldn't have to choose between earning a living and putting your kids in bad childcare. I think once we begin with the proposition that childcare is a reality, not a luxury, then the next question we have to ask ourselves is, are we getting the best quality childcare we can?
Right.
And I think what most people would say to that is, yeah, if you pay for it. And that shouldn't be the answer in this day and age in our country.
Okay. In New York, DSS determines the rate for childcare subsidies. Suffolk County, for one, just cut families off from subsidies, put them at 125% of the poverty level. How will you address childcare affordability if you're elected? Because I know we talked a little bit about it somewhat, but so for instance, if the minimum wage is increased, what are we doing about the subsidies? Because a lot of the childcare providers also receive children that are subsidized. Are those subsidies increasing? Because we can see that the New York government has been actually in different counties lowering the poverty level.
Sure. I think that it's becoming clear that there is a difficulty in people meeting their needs at all levels. I think when you talk about unaccompanied minors and different immigrant families coming here, the stresses are really great. I have that in some of my communities. That's certainly a difficult issue for our schools and all of our institutions, how to absorb all that need that comes in at once. But look, Long Island needs to get its fair share from Albany. We pay a lot and we don't see that commensurate return. And so investing more state money in these programs so that their costs go down is something we definitely need to consider. Our taxpayers would not feel the burden of that because we're already paying so much. But making sure that our programs are receiving those subsidies from money we already pay the state, to me, is definitely a good answer.
Okay. And then last question about childcare. Both the federal funding appropriated in the governor's 2016 and 2017 executive budget does not fulfill the requirement mandated by the Federal Child Care Development Block Grant. Without additional funding, is it possible that New York State will have to cut services and programs? How would you plan to address this?
Well, it's our job as the legislature to make sure that we do meet that funding and that we don't have that gap, and I look forward to fighting to restore that money.
Okay. Thank you. Can we hold you to that? All right. New York State is currently one of 2 states that automatically prosecutes 16 and 17-year-olds as adults for any crime, misdemeanors as well, which means they are automatically housed in adult jails and prisons. Where do you stand on this issue, and what changes would you make to the juvenile justice system?
Sure. So I have a record on fighting crime. Certainly that's worlds and worlds beyond where my opponent is, and frankly, this is one area that I come to the table with a lot of expertise. I prosecuted people every day for 10 years. So I'm comfortable in my position because I'm not soft on crime. It was my life. But we have to understand the difference between prosecution and smart prosecution. We don't want to be throwing away the lives of our young people into a system that really has proven that it does very well in punishing, but not that well in rehabilitation. So we don't want to be wasting their potential by putting them in that system. So I am for raising the age to 18 years of age, from 16 where it is now. I think there might be certain exceptions of heinous crimes that we would want to exclude from that, but certainly nonviolent offenses and most other offenses that we see our 16 and 17 year olds committing should not be treated in the adult system. There should be a separate system for those individuals where judges and others in the system who are experts in that area will be able to tailor the remedies. I don't even want to say punishments, but we'll be able to tailor what's meted out to get them on the right track, not to put them in an adult system. I've seen exactly what that can do. I had to make decisions on those cases. I prosecuted people of that age, and it's horrifying, right? Because you want to do justice for the victim, but you also know that the result could be almost worse than the disease, so to speak.
Right,
you don't want to cure the cold by killing the patient, right?
Right.
So that is important, and I think that if we have a separate system that's sensitive to those needs, we'll get better outcomes. Clearly, if there's a 17-year-old repeatedly being involved in extremely violent offenses, we may have to take an exception with that, but that's not by and large what we're seeing in our system these days, and I think we need to be able to deal with that differently.
Okay. And part B to that, in your opinion, do you feel is the reason that New York has not yet adopted these viewpoints that you have?
I think that, we've had a Senate that's more concerned about looking tough on crime than doing the right thing. And I think I'm a perfect person to lead on this issue, frankly, because, I think my record on fighting crime is pretty good, and so you'll need someone like me to be able to say, I'm okay with this. So I hope to, be one of the leaders in this fight, but that being said, we need to do this carefully and let the public understand why we're doing this. We're not opening the jails and letting people, take over the streets. It has to be done responsibly, and I look forward to working with people that understand how this works to create a better system that's more sensitive to the needs of our adolescents who are in that critical phase where they've done wrong, they've hurt other people, but putting them in the adult system will only cause two wrongs.
Okay. Thank you. So let's go here. Too many children in this country who are suffering from child abuse and maltreatment often die. If elected, how would you address this issue?
Sure. So I unfortunately had to investigate a lot of, I don't know what a lot is, but more cases than I would ever care to share of young people being abused, responding in the middle of the night. I remember in one particular case talking to a 16-year-old girl who was impregnated by a relative, in a rape of that kind. It was awful. So I've had to deal with this. At the end of the day, there are normally family members who know what is going on but who feel afraid to report those actions, and we need to continue to create a safe environment where people could come forward, realize that people are going to work with them, not work against them, and create a safe environment. So when I was in Queens, we developed the Child Advocacy Center, and the district attorney deserves a lot of credit for that. So in one place, you have the police, social workers, prosecutors, and health officials, so that someone doesn't have to go to 10 different places to receive those services, and they know that people are looking out for them, not just trying to close a case or get an arrest or get a stat. And I think that's really important, and so we need to be creative in terms of how we think about that. At the same time, we need to give much more money to our child guardians in court. They're really underfunded, and they're frankly, as much as I was proud to have looked after children, it's really not the prosecutor's job, right? The prosecutor's job is to get justice overall, and sometimes that means doing what the child needs, but not always. And so there are people specifically in court called guardians ad litem, right, whose job is just to represent the needs of the kids, and they almost get paid nothing. There are too few of them. They have too many cases, and so I would be greatly in favor of increasing funding for those individuals.
For those family law guardians.
Yeah.
Okay. What changes, if any changes, would you like to see pertaining to the Common Core initiative?
Sure. So in my career, Common Core has assumed a very prominent place. Long Island, where I am in Nassau, is really some of the epicenters of rebellion against the state system, and rightfully so. School needs to be more than about just drilling on math and other subjects. It needs, you want to have children excited to go to school, and teachers who talk about having high morale and who are excited to teach and be creative about that. And frankly, a test that helps teachers do their job, not just slaps them on the wrist or worse, and then you don't even know what the results are to help the children that you're trying to teach. So the system has gotten away from having public buy-in. And what I mean is, if you were going to create a test, you need to convince people that the test works and help kids learn. And then you need teacher buy-in about what the test should include and how comfortable they are teaching that subject matter. Look, I think teachers will all agree that being pushed is not a problem, being stretched is not a problem, being challenged is not a problem, but being done so unfairly is a big problem. And I was really proud to be supported last year by a number of parents associations, including the Long Island Opt-out movement, and Jeanette Duderman, who's the leader of that, who saw me as the best choice in an election. And frankly, the protesting groups gave my opponent a lot of money, millions of dollars, to run commercials against me. And that's Long Island taxpayer money that they seek to have go elsewhere into these different organizations that support different schools in the city or different protesting. Look, I am pro accountability, but I'm pro fair accountability. And my record on that is very strong. On the last day of the Senate, there was supposed to be a measure that would have disconnected teacher evaluations from school funding, which are still currently tied together. When a bill came up to extend that for 3 months, I was the only one out of all the senators in the state to stand up and say, why are we still connecting our teacher evaluations, which we all admit are broken and need to put a stop on, with our school funding that's so precious and important? The only one. It was 2 in the morning. I didn't care. It's an important thing that needed to be said. So my record is clear. My money is where my mouth is on this. And frankly, another issue that's tied in together with this a little bit, but importantly, is diplomas for our students with special needs. Because testing is so paramount, you need to pass a certain number of regents in order to graduate. So we've got a lot of great kids with a lot of talent, with a lot of potential, who aren't getting diplomas because a certain test, in light of the way they're challenged learning, they're not able to pass. We need to think of more creative ways, such as project-based assessments, to evaluate our children and pick up their potential and be able to say this person should graduate. They may not be able to get a certain grade on a standardized test, but this person isn't standard. Okay, this person has other ways of demonstrating how special he or she is. I've been leading the movement to change that, and I think we're getting somewhere. Last year, we opened the door a little bit to allow more children to graduate who didn't pass what would have been last year's requisite testing requirements, but we need to do much more. When you talk to a family of a child who's has a special child who's a great kid and could go on to the military or trade school or a music conservatory, but who can't even get a basic high school diploma, it's sad. We need to do more for them.
Thank you. Well, I feel like this is a little redundant now because you've shared, but maybe there's something that you want to mention that you haven't shared with us yet. But what have you done personally or professionally? Well, you talked about what you've done professionally to improve the lives of children. What about you as a person? What have you done on a personal level to improve the lives of children?
Sure. So I think we don't connect the environment to children very much, but I think we should. And I do agree with the supposition that we don't own the earth, we're just stewards for our children, and we need to give them back a better planet. And when you see what scientists are learning about this being the hottest summer on record, and climate change is heating up much more than normal, it's very disturbing. But it goes much more beyond a global conversation. Just here in Nassau, the western bays where I live on the South Shore are polluted. We have this Saturday a cleanup that I'm sponsoring in Baldwin at Silver Lake, because a young girl who's 11 named Zoe wrote me a letter saying it looks disgusting. And I said, you want to work with me? And she said, sure, we're gonna have 30 people come out and help clean it up. So there's a lot that we could be doing in our environment, whether it's fixing the Bay Park outfall pipe to help our western bays, whether it's getting more renewable energy, whether it's cleaning up our lakes, streams, and rivers and fields. There's a lot that we could do. And I think if you looked at a 5-year-old and could look them in the face right now and said, you're getting a better earth than I had, I think you would not be honest with that person.
Right.
We're not having a good trajectory. We need to turn that around, and I hope to be one of the leaders to continue doing that.
Okay. What makes you the best candidate for kids?
Look, I think my record is really strong on this. At the end of the day, I had a clear position on paid family leave and the minimum wage. I didn't dodge it. I came out and wrote in favor of that before The governor even did his whole statewide tour on that, and I helped fight for that, and I helped get that done. In terms of fighting against the Common Core, my record standing up in the Senate and the Assembly on that is pretty evident, and I think I've gotten the support this year of the New York State United Teachers, as well as a lot of parent groups because of my work there. My work on the environment is something I'm proud of. The League of Conservation Voters endorses me. And at the end of the day, I'm the only candidate in this race who could say for now 12 years between serving in the legislature and being a prosecutor, all I've done every day is wake up and say, how do I help the public? It's not just something that I dabble in. This has been my life. It's been my job. And now that I have an 19-month-old as of last week, it even takes on a greater importance to me. So I'm going to be a strong candidate for children, whether it's in curbing abuse. And by the way, making sure that those who have abused in the past are held accountable is extremely important to me, especially as someone who pursues justice. There's a lot of different things that we can do to curb abuse, to end hunger, to make sure children are not homeless, that are being educated. We drive by every day. We don't even really see what's in front of us. I was proud to get school supplies donated, and I brought them over to a local superintendent. And just last week, in a district you wouldn't even consider it, said I have 7 homeless children this year. These book bags will come in handy. So we can't be blind. We first have to know it exists and say it exists and go out there and try to do that. And when I do get state funding, I think of children all the time. That's why the Five Towns Community Center was a recipient of a grant of mine. That's why the Long Beach Martin Luther King Center, that has an after-school program, I was able to get $25,000 to. That's why the Oceanside JCC, I'm helping get 6 figures to build a new roof. So it's and there are many others. So funding our schools, helping our environment, curbing abuse, curbing hunger, all the things you mentioned. That's what I do every day. It's critically important.
Okay. If you are reelected into Senate, what bills will you be championing around children's issues?
Sure. So many of these that I've talked about. I've had a bill that would roll back the Common Core and start again with a new panel that would have teacher input to figure out where we go from here for testing.
Anything for children like within the 0 to 5 age range?
Yeah, look, I help co-sponsor and push bills all the time that add money to programs that benefit those children. Certainly making sure that pre-K is out here is critical for me, and having money for those early nutritional programs is extremely important to me, sure.
Okay. I have asked my questions. Did anything happen to come up at all?
No, just a lot of...
Okay, a lot of thumbs up. All right, you got a lot of thumbs up. So just in closing, just let everyone know your final thoughts and what you would just like to say to the public.
Yeah, look, I think this election there's a lot of divisiveness, and we have to remember that children are not part of that. No matter where they come from, no matter what they look like, they have the right to a bright future, and if they're here, we owe it to ourselves to try to help them. And I don't care where kids are from or what communities they live in or what schools they go to, we need to fight for our kids. And when I hear about kids who are abused, it breaks my heart. I have an immediate sense of wanting to do something about that, and we got to do that. So whether it's going after polluters, going after abusers, making sure our kids have every advantage, that's what we need to be doing every day.
All right, great. And if you are reelected, we will definitely be looking forward to bringing some of our advocates to meet with you to speak about maybe some children's issues that they're interested in that you might be interested in championing.
All right, well, with the way you guys pursued me to do this interview, I have no doubt that will be true. So.
Hey, we're working for you people! Well, and I hope that you will, like you did today, respond and take our meeting.
Definitely.
It's been a pleasure. I thank you for meeting with us. He did not know what the questions were going to be beforehand, so I thank you for being brave and taking the time to meet with us to let the public know where you stand on children's issues, because as we said, it's a challenge for us to hear that information.
Sure, and for any constituents out there, this is not about a campaign. If you feel that there are issues I need to address or problems within Southwestern Nassau, my office of Senator Todd Kaminsky, is 516-766-8383. We're here to help.
Thank you. Until next time, we'll see you, I'm sure, in a few more days with another candidate.